The American Revolution all started with mercantilism. The idea of mercantilism is having more exports than imports, and to make more money than you spend. With this, there was a rule that the colonists could only trade with their mother country, Britain. This created the urge for colonists to smuggle with other places so they could make profit for the goods they produced. Although smuggling was against the law, since mercantilism was doing so well, the mother country didn't pay very close attention to the colonists as long as there were exports being sent out. This is known as salutary neglect. As time wore on, tensions grew as Britain cracked down on the colonists. Parliament passed a law called the Sugar Act. The Sugar Act did three things, the most important being it enforced a law against the colonist smuggling. The British didn't stop there. They passed another law called the Stamp Act, which forced the colonists to buy special stamped paper for almost everything. This outraged colonists, and they began to form resistance groups such as the Sons of Liberty. Their protesting paid off, and the Stamp Act was repealed. Unfortunately, a new law was passed called the Townshend Act. This placed a tax on imported goods such as glass, lead, paint, and paper. It also put a 3-cent tax on tea. The colonists reacted with rage and protested no taxation without representation. With all these new laws, the colonists were filled with anger, and they soon picked a fight with British soldiers guarding the customs house. They threw snowballs, struck the soldiers with clubs and sticks, and taunted and yelled at them to fire. The British soldiers fired into the crowd, killing 5 people. This became known as the Boston Massacre. A couple years later, the colonist boycott struck the British East India Company and dumped 18,000 pounds of tea into the Boston harbor. This protesting act was soon known as the Boston Tea Party. As a result of this, Parliament passed the Intolerable Acts. One of the laws shut down the Boston harbor due to the fact the colonists wouldn't pay for the tea they dumped into it. A second law let British commander house soldiers in vacant private homes and other buildings. Boston was also put under martial law, which meant they were ruled by military forces. Soon the colonists started making military preparations. Civilians or soldiers began collecting gunpowder and weaponry. General Gage readied his troops, but the Minutemen were watching. John Hancock and Sam Adams were in hiding, and Paul Revere was sent to warn Hancock, Adams, and the soldiers. When the British reached Lexington, 70 Minutemen were awaiting them. Shots were soon fired, leaving 8 Minutemen dead, 10 wounded, but only 1 British soldier injured. As the British marched to Concord, over 3,000 Minutemen were assembled. They opened fire on them, killing many at a time. The surviving British soldiers marched back to Boston. The Minutemen remained camped around Boston, which kept the debate for independence at the Second Continental Congress going. General Gage decided to re-attack the Minutemen. This is known as the Battle of Bunker Hill. As a result of the battle, the colonists lost 450 men and the British over 1,000. The Second Continental Congress still hoped for peace and made an attempt to go back to their old ways with the Olive Branch Petition. King George rejected this, refusing to have peace. The Congress soon urged each colony to form its own government. Thomas Jefferson was chosen to represent the Congress and wrote the Declaration of Independence. The Declaration included how people should enjoy their natural rights, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It also stated that all men were created equal. On July 2, 1776, the delegates voted that the American colonies were free. This created a difficult choice for Americans because they had to choose to be either a patriot who supported independence or a loyalist who remained loyal to the crown. On the loyalist side, 2 brothers, William Howe and Richard Howe, joined forces and sailed to New York. George Washington's troops were greatly outnumbered, and fewer than 8,000 were left. As an attempt to resolve everything, George Washington led his troops to Trenton and killed 30 of the enemy and took 918 captives. One of Howe's fellow British generals, John Burgoyne, had a plan to join their armies and fight together. This plan didn't work, and Burgoyne was surrounded in Saratoga, where he surrendered. After this, the colonists and the British both changed their military tactics. The Patriots became more experienced with fighting, and the British shifted their operations to the south. The British Army, led by Charles Cornwallis, sailed south and captured Charlestown in South Carolina. Cornwallis led his army into North Carolina, where Patriots attacked them, causing them to flee back to South Carolina. The Patriots harassed the British Army and soon caused Cornwallis to raise the white flag of surrender in Yorktown. After all the fighting was over, peace started to settle in. The Treaty of Paris was signed by the delegates and finally confirmed the United States was independent and set the new boundaries. During the war, the differences between the rich and the poor were somewhat forgotten, which created a rise in egalitarianism, which is the belief that all men were created equal. This was a whole new start for America. They had come a long way to their independence and had to come up with totally new rules and government on their own.